What does it cost to kill a man who hasn't been photographed in 16 years? On February 12, 2008, Imad Mughniyeh walked out of a building in Damascus and died 8 seconds later. The bomb that killed him had been waiting inside a spare tire for 3 months. It was detonated from a control room 500 kilometers away, and the operative who placed it had no idea he'd just created a liability that would get someone killed 8 months later. This isn't a story about a successful assassination. This is a story about what happens when you teach your enemies exactly what to defend against. Because Mossad didn't just eliminate Hezbollah's most wanted commander. They closed the operational window that made the kill possible. And by the time they realized what they'd actually done, their adversaries had already rewritten the rules. In June 2007, a Mossad analyst named Danny was handed a file that had been growing for 12 years. Imad Mughniyeh wasn't just careful, he was architecturally invisible. Since 1985, he had orchestrated the Beirut barracks bombing, the hijacking of TWA Flight 847, and the 1994 AMEA attack in Buenos Aires. He had built Hezbollah's military doctrine from nothing, and for 2 decades, no intelligence agency had tracked his location for more than 48 hours. The file Danny received contained 400 pages of behavioral analysis, intercepted communication fragments, and 3 confirmed aliases. It also contained a note from his predecessor: Mughniyeh doesn't have patterns. He has anti-patterns. Danny had spent 6 years running technical operations in hostile territory. He specialized in short window placements, bugs, tracking devices, chemical markers. But this assignment was different. He wasn't being asked to track Mughniyeh. He was being asked to find a pattern in someone who had designed his entire life to eliminate patterns. Mughniyeh never slept in the same location twice in a row. He rotated vehicles daily. He used intermediaries for every communication. He operated across 3 countries, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, moving through jurisdictions where Mossad couldn't deploy ground teams without triggering a diplomatic crisis. But in June 2007, a surveillance team in Beirut noticed something that didn't fit. Mughniyeh's security detail had started making regular trips to Damascus. Not for meetings, those were always unpredictable. These trips had a rhythm. Every 3 to 4 weeks, the same 2 vehicles crossed the border, stayed in Damascus for less than 6 hours, and returned. The pattern wasn't about Mughniyeh. It was about his driver. His name was Ahmed. He had worked for Mughniyeh for 9 years, and unlike Mughniyeh, Ahmed had a family in Damascus, a wife, 2 children, and a mother who required regular medical care. Ahmed wasn't making operational trips, he was making family visits, and Mughniyeh, who trusted almost no one, had allowed this routine to continue because Ahmed had never been compromised. Danny wrote a single line in his operational brief: "We don't need to track Mughniyeh. We need to track the one person Mughniyeh trusts to stay predictable." But this created a new problem. If Ahmed was visiting Damascus every few weeks, Mossad had a narrow targeting window. But Mughniyeh himself rarely traveled with Ahmed. He used decoy vehicles, switched routes mid-journey, and never confirmed his presence until arrival. Even if Mossad placed a bomb in Ahmed's car, they couldn't guarantee Mughniyeh would be inside when it detonated. They needed a weapon that could wait, and Mossad had never built one. In August 2007, Danny received an assignment that didn't make operational sense. He was told to place a bomb in Ahmed's vehicle, arm it remotely, and leave it dormant for an indefinite period, possibly months. The device was a shaped charge embedded inside a modified spare tire. The explosive weighed 2.1 kilograms. The detonator was linked to a backup power system that drew microcurrent from the car's electrical system, and the trigger mechanism was remotely activated via satellite relay. But the device had never been tested in a real-world environment. No one knew if the explosive would remain stable after months of heat exposure. No one knew if the remote signal would penetrate Syrian communications infrastructure. And no one knew if Ahmed's vehicle would undergo maintenance that might expose the device before Mossad had a chance to use it. Danny reviewed the operational timeline and found the problem immediately. Ahmed's vehicle was scheduled for a tire rotation in early November. If Danny waited until after the maintenance, he'd lose access to the vehicle. If he placed the bomb before the maintenance, it would almost certainly be discovered. So Danny made a decision that wasn't part of the operational plan. He bribed the mechanic. $800 to delay the tire rotation by 2 weeks, and he didn't report the bribe to his handlers, because if the bribe failed, the entire operation would collapse before it started. And if it succeeded, no one needed to know. Danny placed the bomb on October 18, 2007. The operation took 90 seconds. He entered the parking garage at 2:14 a.m., removed the spare tire, installed the modified replacement, and walked out at 2:16 a.m. The device was armed. The satellite relay was active. And for the next 72 hours, Mossad's technical division monitored the signal to confirm the detonator remained responsive. On October 21st, the signal went dead. Not degraded, not weakened, completely unresponsive. Mossad's engineers ran diagnostics for 6 hours before concluding that the device had either malfunctioned or been discovered. Danny's handlers pulled him out of Damascus the same day. The operation was classified as failed dormant, pending investigation. But 3 weeks later, the signal returned. No explanation, no pattern. The detonator simply started responding again as if nothing had happened. Mossad's technical team reviewed telemetry logs and found a single anomaly. Syrian communications infrastructure had undergone a temporary upgrade in late October that blocked low-frequency satellite signals for 18 days. The device hadn't failed. It had been silenced by external interference. This created a problem no one had anticipated. If Syrian infrastructure could block the detonator once, it could block it again. And if Mossad sent the kill signal during a blackout window, the bomb would remain armed indefinitely inside a vehicle driven by Mughniyeh's most trusted operative, in a country where Mossad had no ground-based abort mechanism. Donnie's supervisor, a senior Syria operative named Yael, flagged the risk in an internal memo. Her recommendation was clear: abort the operation, extract the device, and redesign the detonator to operate on multiple frequencies. The memo included a single sentence that would later be cited in 3 separate internal reviews: "We cannot execute a remote kill if we cannot guarantee remote access." But Mossad leadership overruled her. They had spent 2 years tracking Ahmed's vehicle. They had compromised a local mechanic, and they had placed a functional bomb inside Mughniyeh's operational radius for the first time in 15 years. Aborting now meant losing the best tactical position they'd held since 1995. Yael was told to monitor the signal and wait for a confirmed targeting window. She was not told what to do if the signal failed again during execution. By December 2007, Mossad had confirmed Mughniyeh's presence in Damascus twice. Both times he traveled in a different vehicle. Both times, Ahmed's car remained parked at a safe house in the Kafr Sousa district. The bomb was functional, the target was in range, and the operation was failing anyway. Danny reviewed surveillance logs and found something that didn't match his initial assessment. Ahmed wasn't just visiting family, he was parking the vehicle outside the Iranian Cultural Center in Damascus. Not as a decoy, as a designated pickup vehicle. The same car, the same location, every 2 to 3 weeks. This violated everything Mossad knew about Mughniyeh's security protocol. Mughniyeh never used designated vehicles. He never repeated locations, and he never allowed predictable movement patterns. So, why was Ahmed's car being used as a fixed-position asset at one of the most surveilled buildings in Damascus? Danny proposed a theory that would later turn out to be catastrophically wrong. He believed Mughniyeh was using the cultural center as a neutral meeting ground, a place where Hezbollah operatives could meet Iranian intelligence without triggering Syrian scrutiny. The vehicle wasn't for transportation. It was for cover. Mughniyeh wasn't planning to drive anywhere. He was sitting inside the car during meetings to avoid being recorded by Syrian intelligence. If Danny was right, Mossad didn't need to wait for a long-range journey. They could detonate the bomb the moment Mughniyeh entered the vehicle. But this introduced a new problem. The Iranian Cultural Center was in a high-traffic district. Detonating a bomb in broad daylight would produce witnesses, immediate investigation, and potential civilian casualties. Yael challenged the theory in a secure call on January 8, 2008. Her objection wasn't tactical, it was structural. If Mughniyeh was using the vehicle for stationary meetings, why hadn't he switched cars after 3 months? Why was he allowing a pattern to develop in the one location where Syrian intelligence maintained 24-hour surveillance? Danny didn't have an answer. But Mossad leadership accepted his theory anyway, because the alternative was admitting they had no idea what Mughniyeh was doing, and no way to find out without risking exposure. On February 10, 2008, surveillance teams confirmed that Mughniyeh had entered Ahmed's vehicle and remained inside for 14 minutes. Mossad leadership authorized a test signal to verify the detonator was still operational. The signal failed. The device didn't respond. Mossad's technical team spent 6 hours troubleshooting the satellite relay before discovering the problem. Syrian communications infrastructure had been upgraded again in late January. The new system was blocking the exact frequency Mossad's detonator relied on. The bomb was armed, functional, and completely unreachable. Yael convened an emergency review with Mossad's technical division. The options were clear. They could abandon the operation and lose the device. They could attempt to send a ground team into Damascus to manually detonate the bomb, a scenario that would require at least 4 operatives and a 72-hour insertion window. Or they could try an untested workaround, frequency hopping. The detonator was designed to receive a single low-frequency signal, but Mossad's engineers believed they could modify the satellite relay to send a burst transmission across multiple frequencies simultaneously. If even one frequency penetrated Syrian infrastructure, the detonator would respond. The problem was detectability. Burst transmissions were loud. Syrian intelligence monitored foreign satellite activity, and a sudden multi-frequency spike over Damascus would almost certainly trigger a counterintelligence sweep. If Syrian security traced the signal back to Israeli satellites, they would immediately search for foreign devices, and they would find the bomb. Yael pushed for abort. Her argument was procedural. Mossad had never executed a remote detonation using an untested transmission method in a hostile urban environment. If the burst failed, they couldn't try again without alerting Syrian security. And if it succeeded but Mughniyeh wasn't in the vehicle, they would lose the only weapon they'd placed in Damascus in 2 years. But Danny argued the opposite. If they aborted now, Mughniyeh would continue operating freely. If they waited for a better opportunity, Syrian infrastructure might upgrade again, closing the operational window permanently. And if they succeeded, they would eliminate the single most valuable target Mossad had pursued in a decade. On February 11, 2008, Mossad leadership made a decision. They would wait for Mughniyeh to enter the vehicle. Then they would send the burst transmission. One attempt? No backup plan. But they still didn't know if the frequency hopping would work, and they didn't know if Mughniyeh would actually get into the car. On February 12, 2008 at 9:47 p.m., Imad Mughniyeh entered the Iranian Cultural Center in Damascus. In Tel Aviv, a 4-person team sat in a secure control room monitoring live satellite footage. The room was small, 3 meters by 4 meters, equipped with a single laptop, a direct encrypted line to Mossad leadership, and a detonation console that required 2 simultaneous key turns to transmit the burst signal. The team had been in position since 6:00 p.m. They had reviewed the execution protocol 11 times, and they had been told to wait until Mughniyeh was fully inside Ahmed's vehicle before sending the transmission. But the satellite feed had a 7-second delay. By the time they saw Mughniyeh enter the car on their screen, he could already be exiting in real time. And if they waited too long, he might leave the vehicle and enter a different car, a scenario that had happened twice in the past month. The team lead was a senior technical officer named Ronan. He had overseen 14 remote operations in the past 6 years, but none of them had involved frequency hopping, and none of them had targeted someone inside a capital city with active counterintelligence monitoring. His job was simple: watch Mughniyeh enter the vehicle, confirm the door was closed, and authorize the transmission. But at 10:12 p.m., Mughniyeh left the cultural center early. He walked toward Ahmed's vehicle, then stopped. He turned around and walked back inside. The satellite feed showed him re-entering the building and disappearing into an interior corridor. Ronan's console operator, a signal specialist named Tal, asked the obvious question, "Do we wait or do we scrub for tonight?" Ronan checked the detonator status. The device was still responsive. The burst transmission was preloaded and ready, but Mossad leadership had been clear. If Mughniyeh didn't enter the vehicle by 11:00 p.m., they would abort and reassess. It was 10:14 p.m. Ronan made a call to his supervisor, Yael. She was monitoring the operation from a separate facility and had direct authority to abort. Her response was immediate. "If he doesn't come back out in 20 minutes, we pull the plug." At 10:31 p.m., Mughniyeh exited the building again. This time, he wasn't alone. A second man walked beside him, shorter, dressed in a dark jacket, carrying a small bag. Surveillance teams didn't recognize him. Mossad's database couldn't identify him from the satellite resolution, and the operational brief hadn't mentioned the possibility of a second target. Tal raised the problem immediately. "If there's a second person in the vehicle, do we still execute?" Ronan didn't have an answer. The shaped charge was designed to destroy the interior of a single vehicle with precision enough force to kill the driver and front passenger, but not enough to produce a fireball that would endanger surrounding buildings. But if 2 people entered the car and one of them wasn't Mughniyeh, Mossad would have killed an unidentified individual without confirming their operational role. Ronan called Yael again. "We have a second person. Unknown identity. Do we proceed?" There was a 6-second pause. Then Yael responded, "Is Mughniyeh getting in the car?" "Not yet. He's still walking toward it." "Then wait." Mughniyeh and the unidentified man reached the vehicle. They stopped at the passenger side. Mughniyeh opened the door. The second man leaned in, placed the bag on the passenger seat and stepped back. Then Mughniyeh closed the door. The second man walked away. Tal exhaled audibly. "Okay, so it's just Mughniyeh." But Mughniyeh didn't get into the car. He stood next to the driver's side door, motionless for 11 seconds. Ronan stared at the screen. What is he doing? Tal zoomed in as much as the satellite resolution allowed, but the image was too grainy to show detail. Mughniyeh appeared to be looking at something, either the vehicle itself or something beyond it. He wasn't moving, he wasn't speaking, and he wasn't opening the door. One of the junior operators in the control room, a communications analyst named Eitan, offered a guess. Maybe he's checking for surveillance. Ronan didn't respond. He was watching the timer. It was 10:37 p.m. If Mughniyeh didn't enter the vehicle in the next 2 minutes, they would miss the authorized execution window. Tal turned to Ronan. "Do we abort?" Ronan didn't answer immediately. He was running through the operational logic. If Mughniyeh was suspicious, detonating the bomb now could expose Mossad's entire Damascus operation. Syrian intelligence would sweep the area. They'd find forensic evidence linking the device to foreign intelligence. And every Hezbollah operative in Syria would know that Mossad had the capability to place remote bombs in operational vehicles. But if they aborted, they might not get another chance. Ahmed's vehicle was scheduled for maintenance in 6 days. If the bomb was discovered, during inspection, Mossad would lose the device, the placement access, and any future opportunity to target Mughniyeh in Damascus. Ronan made a decision he wasn't authorized to make. We wait until he gets in. If he walks away, we scrub. At 10:38 p.m., Mughniyeh opened the driver's side door. He sat down, he adjusted the seat, and then he reached for the bag the second man had left on the passenger seat. Tal's hand moved toward the detonation console, then stopped. He's not closing the door. Ronan leaned forward. Mughniyeh was still sitting in the vehicle, but the driver's side door was open. If they detonated now, the blast would be partially vented through the open door, reducing lethality and increasing the chance of witnesses seeing the explosion in progress. Eitan spoke quietly. If he's reaching for the bag, he's not leaving. He's settling in. Ronan checked the timer again. 10:38 p.m. They had 2 minutes left in the execution window. Tal asked the question no one wanted to answer. Do we detonate with the door open, or do we wait? Ronan looked at the screen. Mughniyeh was pulling something out of the bag too small to identify from satellite resolution. It could have been a phone. It could have been documents. It could have been nothing. And then Mughniyeh closed the door. Tal didn't wait for authorization. His hand moved to the detonation console. Ronan turned his key. Tal turned his, and the burst transmission launched across 7 frequencies simultaneously. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. The satellite feed remained static. The device didn't respond. Ronan's screen showed no confirmation signal. Tal checked the transmission log and saw the burst had been sent successfully, but the detonator hadn't acknowledged receipt. Eitan spoke first. Did it fail? Ronan didn't answer. He was staring at the screen, waiting for the 7-second delay to resolve. And then the feed went white. The blast was contained. No fireball, no secondary explosion. The vehicle's frame absorbed most of the concussive force, and the shaped charge directed the energy inward. By the time the satellite feed cleared, the car was a collapsed frame with shattered windows. Tal confirmed the detonation. Device executed. Target vehicle destroyed. But they still couldn't confirm if Mughniyeh had been inside when the bomb detonated. The satellite resolution wasn't high enough to identify remains. Syrian emergency response arrived within 4 minutes, and they immediately cordoned off the area. Mossad's surveillance teams couldn't get close enough to confirm the kill without risking exposure. For the next 6 hours, Mossad didn't know if the operation had succeeded. At 4:22 a.m. on February 13th, Mossad received confirmation from a signals intercept in Beirut. Hezbollah leadership had issued an internal communication confirming Imad Mughniyeh's death. The operation had succeeded. But by 6:00 a.m., Mossad's leadership realized they had a different problem. Hezbollah didn't issue a standard martyrdom statement. They didn't call for retaliation. Instead, they released a detailed technical assessment describing the explosion as a remotely detonated-shaped charge triggered by satellite relay. The statement didn't accuse Israel of recklessness. It accused Israel of demonstrating a new operational capability. And they were correct. Within 12 hours, Hezbollah operatives across Lebanon and Syria began implementing new vehicle security protocols. Mandatory daily inspections, randomized transportation, immediate sweeps of any parked vehicle left unattended for more than 6 hours. They didn't treat Mughniyeh's death as a failure of personnel security. They treated it as proof that Mossad could place a dormant bomb in any vehicle, arm it remotely, and detonate it from hundreds of kilometers away without deploying a single operative to the kill zone. Mossad had eliminated their highest value target, but they had also revealed the exact capability their adversaries now needed to defend against. By March 2008, Mossad's technical division reported a 60% decline in successful vehicle-based operations across the Middle East. Hezbollah operatives stopped using designated vehicles. Syrian intelligence upgraded their counterintelligence sweeps. Iranian Revolutionary Guard units in Lebanon began treating every parked car as a potential explosive device. Yael had flagged this risk in an internal memo 3 months earlier. Her assessment had been precise. Remote detonation operations are single-use tactics. Once demonstrated, they cannot be repeated without significantly higher operational cost. Mossad leadership had proceeded anyway, and now the operational window that made Mughniyeh's assassination possible had closed behind them. But the cost didn't stop there. In May 2008, Syrian intelligence identified the mechanic Danny had bribed. They didn't trace the bribe back to Mossad. They flagged him as a potential foreign asset after reviewing financial transactions from October 2007. The mechanic was interrogated for 6 weeks, released, and placed under permanent surveillance. Danny's handlers assured him the mechanic would be safe. But in November 2008, the mechanic disappeared. His family filed a missing persons report. Syrian authorities claimed he had fled to Turkey, but Mossad's intelligence division intercepted communications indicating the mechanic had been killed in a Syrian detention facility after a second round of questioning. Danny wasn't informed until January 2009. He had assumed the operation ended when Mughniyeh died. He hadn't been told that the bribe created a permanent liability, and he hadn't been told that covert operations don't end with the target's elimination, they end when every operational threat is resolved. Danny submitted a formal request for psychological evaluation in February 2009. The assessment flagged him as high risk for operational guilt and recommended immediate removal from active fieldwork. He spent 2 years in administrative roles before leaving Mossad in 2011. His case was cited in 3 separate internal reviews as evidence that bribery operations in Syria were no longer operationally sustainable. By 2010, Mossad's success rate for recruitment-based operations in Damascus had dropped by 40%, because local assets had learned that cooperation with foreign intelligence could result in delayed, unpredictable consequences. The operation had cost more than Mughniyeh's life. It had cost a recruitment pathway, and it had cost Hezbollah nothing they couldn't replace. Mughniyeh was succeeded by Mustafa Badreddin, who adopted every security measure Mughniyeh had used and added 3 new protocols specifically designed to counter remote detonations. Badreddin survived 5 assassination attempts before being killed in Syria in 2016. His successor, Fuad Shukr, implemented a standing policy. No vehicle would be used twice within a 72-hour period, and no operative would enter a parked vehicle without a 15-minute pre-entry sweep. Mossad had proven they could kill a man from 500 kilometers away, but they had also proven that targeted killings don't prevent institutional continuity. Hezbollah's military wing didn't collapse after Mughniyeh's death. It adapted, and by demonstrating a new capability, Mossad had forced their adversaries to build defenses that made future operations exponentially harder to execute. The bomb worked, the operation succeeded, but the cost wasn't measured in explosives or intelligence leaks. It was measured in the operational space that closed behind it. By 2012, Mossad's Syria division had stopped using remote detonation as a primary assassination method, not because the technology failed, but because their adversaries had learned to assume every vehicle was a weapon and every parking space was a potential kill zone. The operation eliminated Imad Mughniyeh, but it also taught Hezbollah exactly what to defend against. And 4 years later, when Mossad attempted a similar operation in Beirut, the target's security team discovered the device during a routine sweep 18 hours before the planned detonation. The spare tire method never worked again. If this operation changed how you think about targeted killings, share it. And if you want to understand how intelligence agencies adapt when their best tactics stop working, the Hidden Ops Archive covers the operations that closed their own doors.